All right, we're going to start things. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Weig. I'm a Sloan Fellow at MIT. I think I hold the honor for the oldest student ever involved with this conference. I'd like to introduce you to what this is. This is a trade show competition, and there's a startup show going on. Startup trade show and competition. The trade show is down the hall. Please do visit the startups in their booths. This is the competition portion. Each startup will get to come up here and pitch for 10 minutes, and then they'll get 5 minutes of Q&A from the judges. And out of the 8 startups this afternoon, there'll be one picked as a winner for a $5,000 prize. The theme of this afternoon is the performance track. So these are all startups that are focused on performance analytics or athlete performance and anything to do around team performance. I'm going to introduce our judges. We have Kristen Mackey. She is the Director of Strategy and Analytics from the NFL. Zachary Levine. He's a VP of Table Games and Strategy for MGM Resorts. We have Amy Huchteson. She is the Commissioner of the America East Conference. And Andrea Walonis is the Senior Director of FP&A for Craft Sports and Entertainment. I'd also like to introduce the co-lead for this, which is Nick. Give him a wave, Nick. And with that, we're going to kick it off. And our first presenter today is Layla Zeroni from Fitnicity.
Hi everyone, my name is Layla. I'm the CEO and founder of Fitnicity. So at Fitnicity, we make it possible for every athlete to get access to lab testing for performance and general health. So today, if you're a superstar athlete, you most likely have access to state-of-the-art lab testing to accurately measure performance, prevent injury, and optimize nutrition. And it's likely that you also have a team of data scientists helping you and your coaches make sense of all the data, the lab data. But the problem is that if you look at the sports market in aggregate and athletes, only a tiny fraction of athletes have access to these resources. And so the question is, what about the rest? So at Fitnicity, we basically bring lab testing and analytics to pretty much any athlete, regardless of their level and where they are. So in fact, the service is live today and used by thousands of customers across the US, from celebrity athletes to people at the beginning of their athletic journey. Now, before I talk a little bit more about the product and how it works, so first, why lab testing? So as an athlete, let's say you want to understand basic things like your body composition, or you want to test your stress and inflammation markers, your hormones, nutritional efficiencies, metabolic health, aerobic capacity. So pretty much anything that is routinely captured at a sports performance lab, if you had one, well, you're pretty much on your own if you don't have the resources. First, because you would have to be educated on that to even think about doing it. And second, once you manage to track down a lab, you're probably going to end up in rooms that look like this, and eventually with results where you kind of feel like you need a PhD just to be able to understand and apply them. And so at Fitnicity, what we did, so we pretty much mapped all the labs in the US, including those that are not necessarily open to the public, but that have equipment and research staff that can be used for performance and health testing. And we've partnered to use their resources so that as an athlete, you can get access to lab testing, performance lab testing, in just a few clicks, so just like you would order or shop for any other product. So today we have national coverage, and the way to think about it is we're a one-stop platform for all type of performance and fitness testing. And depending on where you are, we might even be just a few minutes from you. So our tests range from body scans to metabolic testing, blood work, covering pretty much anything from stress and inflammation to injury risk, muscle status, hormonal imbalances, nutrition, hydration, general health, and even sports-specific testing. So here's how it works. So first you select what you want to test for, then you complete the test, and then you receive your results directly on the platform. Now, in the background, what we did is we built a platform that integrates with all of our partner labs nationally, so that whenever a test is completed, the data is transferred, and you receive your results and detailed analysis directly on your profile. So our partner labs range from large health systems, so university health systems and hospitals, to very small sports and general health clinics all throughout the US. And more recently, we even eliminated the trip to the lab, so if you don't want to go. So we just announced a strategic partnership with Quest Diagnostics, which is the largest lab in the country, and more specifically with the sports diagnostics unit of Quest Diagnostics. At this point, we're the only company to have access to this technology, so this one, actually. And currently, it's only available through Quest Diagnostics directly to large teams, such as the New York Giants and a few others. But as an athlete, you can basically just go right now on fitnessy.com and order it directly on our website as part of our beta. And basically what this does is you use it to collect your blood sample directly, you mail it, and receive your results directly on your Fitnessy profile. Now, an important component of our company, of our product, is obviously the reports themselves. So our team is from MIT and Stanford, and prior to this has done a lot of research on data visualization, visual analytics applied to healthcare, including at the Interactive Data Lab at Stanford and here at MIT. So we're pretty passionate about the report section, obviously, also of the company. And so we basically designed a report that kind of like do the job of what a data scientist or analyst would do for you as an athlete. So, for instance, we use publicly available databases and research to add as much context as possible to your results. So we started recently, for instance, with endurance and combat sports, where you would, of course, not only get your results, but you can also interact with them and explore based on factors like age, gender, ethnicity, weight classification, or any other classification that is relevant to your sport, and see exactly how you compare with other athletes. You can see, for example, that you are in a 5th or 7th percentile, or among many other things. Again, as opposed to this. So today we have the largest selection of tests in terms of tests that we cover. In terms of geography, so we are just about to be in all 50 states at the end of this month. So we have thousands of customers, tens of thousands of people on the wait list on areas where we're not live yet. 30% of our customers are repeat customers. Our tests range from $99 to a few hundreds of dollars, and we're only 18 months old, actually, but we're already on track for a multi-million-dollar revenue. Now, in the process, as you may have noticed, we're also building the largest, and to the best of my knowledge, only database of lab test results by sport. Now, on a final note, while it is fun to test elite athletes, our vision is even bigger. Because when you think about it, you don't necessarily need to be eyeing an Olympic medal to care about your body composition or nutritional or vitamin deficiencies. While our report and work today are focused on elite athletes, we already see a lot of what we call everyday athletes also purchase our product as well. And our long-term vision is to make it more of an integrated product that includes fitness and also, lab testing, and also fitness and diet. So just like you would have a connected bike or an app like Strava designed a plan for you, you complete a Fitnessity lab test and get a detailed plan before you come back again for a follow-up and so on. And so that's where we see the biggest and billion-dollar opportunity. Now, in the meantime, we're obviously focused, like I said, on the top of the pyramid before we even get to the more general consumer. So at Fitnessity, we view lab testing as performance lab testing as a window into the athlete's body. And like you said in the company, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And our goal is to make lab testing accessible to every athlete and understandable by every athlete so that everyone can get a shot at being a better version of themselves. Thank you.
So now the judges get a Q&A session for about 5 minutes.
Hi, thank you. My first question, when you had explained that you were still waiting to have a presence in some of the states, what are the barriers from stopping you if it is a web-based program or a port app-based program?
Yes, so it's just time, actually. So we basically, the way it works when we onboard a partner, we have a specific process that we've designed. So there's a legal agreement, and then that has to be put in place, and then a small technical integration. So it's basically just time, actually. Other than that, so that's something that we're working on right now, and that should be done very soon.
So there isn't a lab that would coast to coast cover you or provide you coverage that's unique to each market? Is that the partner that you're
Quest
contracting
Diagnostics,
with?
actually. So
Okay.
that's the biggest partnership that we just recently announced, and so that one is basically all states. And for that, it's the at-home lab test, so the one that you don't actually need to visit a lab. So by definition, it's everywhere. You could also visit a center if you really want to, but there's the option is of doing it yourself. But for the other tests that require physical presence, then we do it lab by lab as part of how we do it.
Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit more about how the athlete, once they receive the results, is able to interpret them through your platform?
Yeah, so when we started, so it was basically just giving people their results and then comparing them with what would be the clinical guideline or healthy range. And then obviously from there, we started to dive a little bit deeper. And then when you think about it, you have to do it also by sport, because a range that is applicable to someone is not necessarily applicable to everyone. And even within the same sport, it might not be. So that's why we started to build what we call verticals or sports, where we dive a little bit deeper by sport. And so for that, for example, we would tell you your vitamin deficiency or your vitamin levels are within this range, and then your cortisol is within this range, your VO2 max or whatever actually you've tested for. And this is what the clinical guidelines, or this is what the research says for athletes like you should be. And so that's how we get a little bit more granular. Now, there's obviously the role of the coach as well that is involved, and also the athlete. So up until a certain point, it's really more to the coach to integrate that with everything else that they know about the athlete.
When you approach a professional team, like you mentioned the New York Giants, what is your value proposition to them? Who do you go through? And then I guess just big picture, ultimately, how much of a part of the percentage or portion of the business do you expect that to be when you're fully mature?
Yeah, so right now we're 100% direct to consumer. So, and it's just because our tests sell a lot faster that way. So we've worked with teams and coaches where they would just go and purchase a bunch of tests directly. But as a company, we don't sell B2B yet. It might change in the future, but we sell mostly direct to consumer. And so in terms of how that might change in the future, so it really depends. So it depends on the test. So for example, the blood biomarker testing, we see a lot of interest in that because that's something that complements what a team would have already in their facility. I mean, it's something. For now, we're really direct to consumer. We don't aggressively pursue teams, although we're obviously happy to have them purchase them directly on our website. We even have team level analytics for that. But at this specific point, it's mostly direct to consumer.
Can you talk a little bit about what you might propose to kind of your everyday, fitness enthusiasts that might, already be into tracking their fitness with an Apple Watch or some other wearable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so among the general, or I would say the non-professional athletes, so some of our best-selling tests might be tests to measure general fitness. So people for example, to get body scans to better understand their body composition, which is often misunderstood. And if they're dieting or changing their lifestyle, then that's something that's very interesting. If someone is, let's say, pursuing one of the very popular diets, that's also a very big market to pursue. So we see a lot of, very early adopters, for example, wanting to test before going into a, let's say, plant-based diet, wanting to test their blood before and after. So their metabolic testing is also popular among the general population in general, although, again, we don't aggressively pursue that, but that's something that is interesting because it has to do with weight loss. That is relevant, of course, for an athlete, but also for a general person. So these are the three, I think, that are pretty popular. But again, it could be also something like nutritional deficiencies, your vitamins. So it really depends on what is your use case as a general fitness consumer. What are you looking to do? Optimize nutrition, weight loss. But there's definitely a part of it that is applicable to the more general consumer.
All right. Thank you, Layla.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Simon Cuff from SBG.
Thank you. Yes, as Jeff said, my name is Simon Cuff. I'm from SBG Sports Software. I'm here to tell you all about our analytics platform, which should be coming up on a slide soon. Can we jump back to the beginning, if that's possible? 2 more slides. Great, thank you. That's not my laptop. So yes, our platform consists of a number of applications that are all tied together with a cloud backend through web services, so it's kind of fully integrated. It also means it's very modular. Some customers may want to dip in with 1 or 2 apps. Some may want to go with the whole suite. And it's multi-sport. Some of it has in-game intelligence. Some of it is very generic that can be customized by the users themselves. Is it the green button? Yeah, there you go. So just a quick, we did have video, audio on this video. As you can see, we're involved in lots of different motorsports, and the rules in motorsports are very diverse. We've gone into athletics. We're at the Rio Olympics, and we're going to be in Tokyo. Mainly look at the very pinnacle of sports, mainly dealing with the kind of elite end and with the champions. But if I go back to how the product came about, so over 10 years ago, our founder and CEO was looking at how he can help the Honda Formula One team with their performance. They were kind of like a mid-table team, looking to kind of like get to the top of the pinnacle. And he identified one of the main problems inside there. We've got 150, 200 people in sport, is keeping them all on the same page, allowing them to understand what's actually going on in the race, and so they can actually work together as a team. So we would take live data, live video from all the sources they had, and allow every single member of that team, you typically get maybe 2 to 250 people, to actually see what's going on in the race, communicate with each other, and really plan the strategy and the different tactical changes you need to make real time during the race. Once that was actually deployed, people realized actually if you could record everything, so it's like a TiVo, where you've got like say 1 million data channels and 100 video channels, 1,000 radio channels. If you can go back and you can look at all of that and look at it at that point in time, you can then work out, well, if I made a mistake, if I made a decision that wasn't as good as it could have been, what did I know at that time and what can I change about my performance, my processes, my procedures to actually make that better? The final kind of like module that came on involved probably about 5 or 6 years later was the actual predictive side of it. So we started building models of the driver, the track, the car, the tires, and then we would predict the race going forward all the time. So you're getting in data from these, and that's changing. The track state's changing, the weather's changing, and you're basically calculating the race going forward every single second, and coming out with like Monte Carlo modeling. So like you can work out whether if you pit on this lap, what's the chance of you gaining a place? If you don't, if you stay out for 2 laps, what's the chance of you losing a place? In terms of our kind of roadmap, so we started in Formula One. We've moved to lots of other motorsports now. We work with Mercedes and 4 other teams in the Formula One grid. We work with Audi, Porsche, and Toyota in world endurance. Le Mans 24 is probably the most demanding of races. It's a 24-hour race with 56 cars. And you can end up with, imagine hours and hours of video, billions of data points that you're trying to process real time and make decisions. Around about 5 years ago, we also started looking at other sports that we could get into. A lot of teams at the high end do knowledge shares and exchange. And in the Premier League, some of them were looking at Formula One and saying, what can we learn from Formula One? So we started building an analysis platform that would take in data for soccer. In the Olympics, we were commissioned by the IOC through Panasonic to provide performance analysis video and actually sports adjudication for a number of different sports. And then last year we won the Queen's Award and the Yahoo Award for Sports Technology. So going on about the platform, so a lot of people want to basically bring in the whole team to the analysis team, and they're all not all in the same place, so you don't want to bring like everyone to the event. And you've got some very skilled people who maybe don't always want to travel with the team. So the key thing about it is it's completely distributed. So it's all, video's all IP-based, the data's all obviously cloud shared, and you can have people in stadium and people at the training ground, people even at home, who are all contributing and maybe connecting live to the bench or to the pit wall and actually helping the team win. It's mobile and portable, which means you can take it with you. You can be looking at it on the plane. A lot of these people, if you're an analyst in a club, you're always traveling. So you want to be able to have the data and the video on your laptop and your tablet. And it's completely customizable. So you may be the sports scientist, or you may be the coach, the defensive coach, or you may be the head coach, and you've got a different view of the game. So you can completely customize the dashboards and the analysis you get out of the system. So here's just an example dashboard that we built up in our soccer product. And again, here, from Formula One, obviously, it's got the biggest amount of data, but there's more and more data coming into other sports. And in elite soccer, there's probably about 7 or 8 leagues worldwide now that have live tracking data. So you get like X, Y, Z for the ball as well, for every single video frame of that game. So it's millions and millions of data points. Combine that with, you'll have a game state data, and there'll be lots of different companies collecting event data. You then also combine that with data the club would generate themselves, either live in the bench, or again, they can now do this remotely, so they may be watching the game on a video stream or on a video feed. And you can bring that all together and actually start having new KPIs that were not possible before. So you can look at like the defensive pressure, the space, player actions off the ball, how the physical is impacting the tactical, and what's the benefit of their physical output. The last thing, a coach always wants is video though. So with all these things, it helps you find game moments very, very quickly, and you can go through, like say, 50 or 60 games very, very quickly and find if a certain thing had happened before, or you want to find a weakness in a team, you can start seeing patterns when you can look at many more games than it was possible when you were just doing it just manually by eye going through video. But essentially, we can also take the right video and give it back to the coach, so then they can then use that in their coaching process. I think just the last thing just to say is that if you look at, say, in Formula One now, it is a very, very data-driven decision-making process. I don't think there's any team now would actually consider running a process on gut feeling now. And we're seeing that now coming into other sports, and that you don't want to, the coaches, they are the experts, and they will make decisions based on their experience, but a lot of them now actually seek knowledge from data. And teams like Mercedes wouldn't ever envisage going into a race without having the software up and running. And it'd be like flying a Dreamliner with saying, I'm not going to turn off all the software and try and fly the plane on its own. In Match Tracker, that's probably our latest product. So it's probably only been embedded in Premier League and Bundesliga for about 2 to 3 years. But we're seeing the same sort of uptake and the same interest in terms of bringing that into the live game and also in the post-match analysis. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can you share a little bit about the penetration of your soccer product as well as your roadmap for other sports going forward?
Sure. In the Premier League, we now have 75% of the Premier League clubs as customers, and also a number of the championship clubs. There's the division below that will be aspiring to be Premier League, so probably 20 out of the top 30 clubs. In the Bundesliga, it's probably now to about half the Bundesliga, and that's probably only in the last year because they have a completely different data set, so we've had to go and support that data set and understand that and bring that into the software. We also work with a number of other federations. We've got a league-wide deal with the Danish Federation, so that's the national federation, and all the teams in the Danish Super League. So, the penetration's been pretty good. In terms of motorsport, we're probably, in terms of European motorsport, work with all the major manufacturers. So we've probably got about 80 to 90% of the manufacturer teams.
How many, just approximately, employees does it take? Let's say it's a race day or something like that. How many people do you have actively working on this product during the race? Or
as in staff from
your company?
So it's really user-driven software. So we are writing all the algorithms. We're deploying it as a SaaS platform, And then a team, like a Formula One team, might have about 220 people using our software race day. They're capped at a maximum of 70 at the track.
Okay.
And then they'll have a race support room of about 150 on a low latency network between the two.
Okay, but for all of your customers, you aren't providing that service. You're providing the.
We would probably have maybe 3 or 4 people that. So we would outsource our just basic IT support, but in terms of the actual kind of analysis side of it, we've probably got about 3 or 4 people.
That's their people. Got it. Okay, thank you.
I want to understand I appreciate you putting this slide back up. For the cameras that are in stadium or any of the hardware that the wearable devices that a player might have in their jersey, are those things that you control, or are you integrating the products that the different clubs are using to then ingest into your system?
We're completely software only, so we can advise on what, say, with video products, what's the easiest way of getting video in, but we can connect to SDI, HDMI, any sort of video source they have. They might have IP cameras or broadcast feeds, and we'll just advise them on compatible products that will bring it into the network, and we just deploy our own software.
And have you run into any integration challenges on any of those different inputs?
I think the main challenge is networking. I think it's very easy with like normal video HDMI, you plug it in and it just kind of works. With network, it's always so that's probably our biggest support headache, is always making sure that the software is working on the network.
Hi. With the ever-growing market of analytics and video and athlete performance, in your opinion, what is the most critical or defining factor that makes SBG's product different from the others?
I think one of it is just the speed, which enables live. So a lot of things you can say, well, actually post-match, I learned this fact after the fact. Whereas we can actually give you that information to the second immediately. So if you're looking at making a change in a substitution or those kind of things, you've got all the data right in front of you. Okay.
What's the latency on that? I mean, there is a little bit.
Yeah, there is. So, I mean, in some things, we're getting data will come in, say, in under a second from wherever the device is. Say on a racetrack, it'll probably about a second latency. Our processing is probably a tenth of a second. It's kind of what we try and aim to when we actually got all the data.
Okay. All right, thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
All right, fortunately this is not a cartoon competition, otherwise we would leave right now. I'm Jeremy Coffey, my partner Drew Tripp. Together we are Changeup. We are dads, we are baseball coaches, we are league administrators. And as dads, as coaches, as league administrators, we have seen over recent years a significant uptick in the number of unnecessary baseball, particularly pitchers, being injured. I say unnecessary because most of these injuries are attributed to overuse. And overuse is shorthand for kids are pitching too damn much and too damn often. And Changeup is intended to be a technology solution that not only makes it easy for coaches to solve this problem, but attractive. Now, unfortunately, we're not the only ones seeing this trend. If you've heard of a baseball injury or a baseball issue, it's probably Tommy John surgery. Tommy John was a baseball player, played for the Dodgers. Midway through his professional career, ruptured his ulnar collateral ligament, a common baseball injury as you throw too much. And a groundbreaking surgery was invented to repair him and let him continue his professional career. And from then on, Tommy John surgery was kind of the province for journeyman pitchers who needed to get a couple more years out of their career, and that's how it went. Unfortunately, we're seeing the Tommy John surgery becoming more and more the province of teenage kids. Kids as young as 12-year-olds are showing up at orthopedist offices needing Tommy John surgery, maybe to get back in the game, maybe just to have some quality of life because they've damaged their arms from overuse. What's going on today? Why is it different today than it was 20 years ago? Well, the baseball industry has changed for youth players. It used to be that baseball players would play in the spring, and then come summertime, they'd go paddle a canoe, go swing on a rope, go do what kids do. The fall would come, they'd play football, they'd play soccer. Winter, they'd play hockey, basketball, whatever. The key was they weren't throwing, they weren't pitching. Nowadays, with the rise in travel baseball, just about any kid who wants to play year-round can find some coach who will take a check, put him on a team, and schedule games for the kid to play. And unfortunately, that's the major problem. They're never getting that rest, they're never getting that recovery period, never healing those little micro tears, micro fractures that occur when you pitch a baseball. Because pitching a baseball is one of the most violent, unnatural things you can do. And so kids are getting hurt because of it. Now, people smarter than us came up with the idea that if pitching too much is bad, kids should pitch less. And so they came up with the idea of let's limit the number of pitches a kid throws per game. Let's limit the number of times a kid can pitch per week, mandate some days of rest so they can heal up. So that should solve the problem. You know, we've got the key, we've got the solution, that should be the end of it. 3 key impediments: players, coaches, and parents. Starting with the players. Kids are indestructible. I'll say it again, kids are indestructible until that moment they're not. Until that moment you're in the doctor's office and you get that news that surgery is required, significant time away from the game, what have you. The kid has thrown too much and has damaged himself. And this is because, kids being kids, they disagree with the statement that pitching too much leads to injuries. 61% said they would play despite arm injury. Despite arm pain. Pain being the body's way of telling you that you need to slow down, you need to take a rest. 64% said they would continue a game if they were injured. So parents and coaches, being the adults in the room, should step in. They should be the police here when the kids won't police themselves. The problem is, youth sports don't always bring out the best in adults. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to a hockey game this afternoon, go to a Little League game this spring, and I think you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes adults lose sight of the fact that youth sports are about kids having fun and getting out and developing. Almost half of kids pitched on consecutive days, one of the big no-nos in pitching. Maybe it was for the same team. Maybe they play for 2 different teams and the coaches aren't coordinating, so they don't know that Johnny Anderson pitched yesterday, so I shouldn't pitch him today. Kids playing on teams with overlapping schedules, so pitching one day and then going out and playing center field on another team another day, getting those long throws in, always putting pressure and stressors on the arm. Nearly 20% of kids have pitched twice in the same day. Can't think of a worse thing for a kid. So in addition to pitch limits, required days of rest, this is where Changeup enters. We're going to provide coaches with an easy-to-use, easily accessible, anyone who has a smartphone can use it, attractive-to-use solution to track pitches, compare those against days of rest requirements, and then use pitchers only as is safe for the kids to use. And to talk more about the features of Changeup, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Drew Tripp.
Thanks, Jeremy. So how is Changeup going to help solve this problem that Jeremy highlighted? Well, first and foremost, we're producing a very easy-to-use, simple mobile application to track pitches. In its simplest form, that's what Changeup does. But why would a coach want to use Changeup? Well, in a nutshell, we're providing information and putting it into their hands right away. We're making their lives easier by removing administrative burdens and challenges that are currently facing coaches across the country. Many baseball organizations and levels have varying pitch count restrictions that are generalized and based on a very simple, throw X number of pitches, you need to rest X number of days before you can pitch again. A lot of coaches are spending a lot of time keeping track of that manually, keeping pitch charts using a manual pitch count clicker, and then have to go back and return it, to report that information into some central organization that's governing the overall compliance with those rules. With Changeup, we're taking away all that administrative overhead. We're giving real-time information and updates and visual cues into a coach's hand. So how many pitches are remaining before Johnny Anderson needs to come out of this game? How many pitches are remaining before he needs to rest a certain number of days? Additionally, we're layering in schedule information. So in addition to knowing how much rest a player is going to need to observe, coaches will know in real time what games a pitcher is likely to miss as a result, and they can make some strategic decisions around how best to utilize their resources. Additionally, we're providing visibility into the opposing team's pitching availability. So coaches, again, can do some more further strategic thinking about how best to deploy their pitchers. And we've taken away the administrative burden of reporting pitch counts. And the thing we think is really the most crucial part of this, and touches on a lot of the problems that coaches of baseball players at younger ages for kids that are playing across multiple teams and multiple overlapping schedules, is our system is player-centric. And what we mean by that is any pitching activity that a player performs in a game can be or is tracked on the Changeup platform. So if Johnny plays for his travel team on a Saturday afternoon and pitches, then he shows up to play for his little league team on Sunday, well, that little league coach knows he pitched because he can see in Changeup that Johnny already threw and he shouldn't be using him again. So we're breaking down the silos of information that exist today across baseball organizations that are leading to a lot of the challenges that we're seeing with kids being overthrown. While that's all great, it's pitch count tracking. It's not super complicated, but where we think the real power of Changeup comes into play is the analytics portion of our solution. So what we mean by that is Changeup has a subjective, and I stress subjective analytics engine baked into it. At fixed intervals, every 20 pitches, a coach is going to do a very quick evaluation of how that pitcher is performing on the mound across a set number of factors on a scale of 1 to 5 based on what that coach knows about that player. So is Johnny throwing with his top velocity right now? Okay, well then let's rank him as a 5. How's his control? How is his stamina? Is he getting tired? Is he keeping batters off balance? All of these factors are evaluated, as I said earlier, on a fixed schedule, so every 20 pitches, and then they're stored away in the Changeup platform and are built up over time into a predictive analytics trends and tendencies model for that particular player. So what that is useful for is a number of things. First and foremost, coaches start to identify how best to utilize that individual pitcher. While pitch counts are great, and we think it's a great step in keeping arms safe, they are standardized. They're set across individual age levels or abilities. With Changeup, it's a custom-tailored pitch count factor to use in how best to deploy pitches. You'll know if a kid gets tired after 40 pitches or 50 pitches and how to use them accordingly. Additionally, we're building up historical player profiles, so every bit of pitching information that a player does is stored on Changeup and is available, is accessible to be used as a recruiting profile for the next level should they want to go on and play. Changeup has a management dashboard baked into it, so governance and tracking of pitch count restrictions and rules can be observed and followed by whoever is running organizations, along with access to the real-time information. We have a lot of features baked into Changeup already and many more coming based on feedback of coaches, baseball experts, and others. And it's an ever-evolving platform that will just continue to build with functionality and features over time to make it more useful and attractive to coaches and baseball programs. Thank you.
Who is your customer? Who do you try to directly sell to? And I guess the reason I ask is it more teams, leagues, or are you looking to do this at like a state level and make it required?
We're going to go as high on the food chain as we can because the power of the platform increases the more teams you have on it. So we're working with a number of state organizations. We're working with a number of travel baseball leagues, organizations that have thousands of teams under them. That's ideally where we want to be, but in the meantime, we're signing up individual teams, we're signing up individual leagues, just to get the product out there. People can see the power of it and like it.
How do you see, this product seems mainly right now tailored more towards the coaches, the leagues. How do you see it potentially evolving so that the players have more information, whether it's about their own health or their pitching skills and things like that?
Sure, there's a couple of different ways. We are a startup company. We're launching in 2 weeks. We are initially rolling out just to coaches, but we do have on our roadmap functionality for parents and players alike. So players can log in, track their pitching work, see how often they're pitching, get at their analytics and their data and their assessments from coaches, be able to share that information with prospective college coaches or scouts or other programs that they want to go and play for. From a parent standpoint, parents are able to track the same information, see how often their kids are pitching, how much work they're doing, and be able to leverage that along with the coaches to help make sure kids aren't getting overused.
And just from a simple usage standpoint, so just like someone sitting probably in the dugout or in the bleachers tracking this stuff manually like you indicate now, is just you imagine them sitting there with their phone or tablet and
Yes.
tracking it and recording it in the same way?
Yep, yeah, we've set it up in a couple of different ways. So if there's a baseball organization that wants to use a centralized pitch tracker, they can do sort of independent, I should say, pitch tracker, they can do so. And each dugout can follow the counts along and still use the analytics platform and have access to availability of opposing teams. But yes, that's the vision is that a coach or a pitching coach, or if they delegate to a player, can easily track this information.
And do you ever envision, I know it's down the road a little bit, but to automate some of that?
We do.
To remove even that
Yep.
last
Yeah,
sort
we're
of
talking to a
capability?
number of technology partners about automating a lot of it. First and foremost, and it was on our roadmap slide as a feature that we're already designing right now, is the ability to track pitch type, location, and velocity, with the velocity being fitted automatically via Bluetooth from a radar gun.
Okay, going off the cuff, that was my question. I will go back to my finance roots and ask for a little more background on the business model and the revenue model. You had indicated that other players and coaches and teams, you could look at other teams. Who can access the data, and how is that business model set up right now?
Do you want to touch on the finance part?
Sure, it's going to be a subscription model. So leagues either would subscribe for the whole league, or individual teams would pay the subscription cost. Actual access to the data is going to be limited to a coach who's authorized by the player or the player himself. And then use of that data will be pretty strictly controlled. There's some personally identifiable information we want to make sure we're protecting. But we do see a number of ways to monetize this platform. Whether it's companies that serve the baseball industry that want to market to our client base with permissions, we would allow that. We're looking at geofenced advertising. Let's say you're playing a game and it's kind of sprinkling out. Hey, look, Dick's is having a sale on raincoats. So Dick's would be able to advertise to players playing at that location. Hey, come on up for a $6.99 rain slicker. So we do see a number of different ways to monetize it. We think it's kind of a wide open field right now.
All right. Thanks, Changeup. Startups here, along with Changeup, our next startup, Headstrong. Danish design meets a high-impact problem head-on. Sport Tech presents Headstrong, a patented gel-packed headband for elevated protection. And from Headstrong to present is Steam Hamburger.
Thank you. The green one? Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me, and I hope you can understand me. We are a Danish company, so I promised that I would say that we are not allowed to sell Greenland. Instead, I'd like to introduce you to a project and a product that will be part of a football revolution that has already started and is probably further away than most of you would realize. Headstrong is a headband, protective headband for football players, soccer players. I'll say that once and then no more. What we call software for hard challenges. Software, it's also the only time I'm going to say software. We're a bit more of a physical product. So why is this revolution coming? It's coming because there's more and more attention drawn to the fact that head injuries in soccer is real, football, sorry, is real and an ever-growing problem. This is where the game is heading, and we see that more and more. Obviously, we realize and understand that when you see games today, it is still not widely used, but I think that the picture on the bottom is one of the ones that shows that this is coming to a different degree than most of us maybe realized, even sooner than we thought. So whole teams, especially in the US, are starting to use headbands. We see regulations already in the US. You might know that kids are not allowed to head. This has been taken over now by the most traditional federation in the world, in the UK. And rules will be next. This is an example of a lawsuit. You're good at that in the US. Essentially, parents suing federations for having failed to mandate the use of headgear. And what I think is also very interesting, there is a rule change on the way from FIFA that you can actually substitute a player with a head injury for 10 minutes to allow for a real investigation of whether that is a concussion. And this is obviously revolutionary. Then you would actually be able to put the player back on the field if it's shown that he does not have a concussion. So running a substitution in football is, unheard of. Most importantly, maybe, headgear works. A recent study out of the University of Wisconsin, a 2-year study with almost 3,000 high school students followed for 2 years, showed that 2 things, essentially. That players not wearing headgear, 5% of players with no headgear had a concussion within 2 years. Obviously, a football career is not 2 years, so you can imagine what the risk is overall. There are different types of headgear. The best available headgear was used by 523 of these players, and only 2.5% experienced concussions over the same period. In any sport where head injuries has become an issue, head protection has become the norm. So how are we going to utilize this opportunity? We believe we have taken a novel approach to making headgear part of the kit. We've taken an approach to balance 3 elements, you might say, 3 keys to success: real protection, performance enhancement, and brand expression that I'd like to explain a little bit more. In terms of real protection, we have developed Impulse, as we call it, essentially a liquid-based cushion as a core of our product. This allows the energy to disperse more efficiently. We've had this tested at Virginia Tech, the helmet lab at Virginia Tech, and have shown to be best in class. And as I mentioned before, using the best headgear reduces the risk by half. Our headgear is proven to be the most efficient. But we're very, very keen on also adding an element of performance enhancement. And we are football people. We have respect for the game, and we know that heading is part of the game. So the protection is at the side of the head, the back of the head, whereas there's only a thin layer of foam in the front of the head. you need to be able to hit the ball. That's part of the game. And if it is going to be a preventive use, a wide use, you need to respect that. And finally, we have to realize that vanity is part of a barrier to having this be widely used. We have created a brand story which we believe will help players see this as cool kid, especially kids. Our platform is more game because you're set free, because you have less worry, because you're covered, because you have higher confidence. You will be headstrong, and you will be the player you always wanted to be. We are engaging role models, not these two, as I have mentioned down below, not yet. But we are engaging role models. We do believe, obviously, that we need a top-down approach, essentially, while this will probably be generational. And we are obviously seeing kids being the primary target group, essentially. We also believe that we need to have players show the way. Luckily, there are players already using headgear, so we can approach players in every league to help us show the way. And as you will see, we also see a huge opportunity for sponsorship, for merchandising. We need to have kids want it, and we believe parents will be happy to pay for it also. Short mention of line extensions. One thing we are working with and also have a patent application for is to use this vehicle for tracking. There's obviously a lot of tracking right now, also in soccer. In football, they have a vest on, which is just annoyance. That doesn't serve any other purpose than we're thinking if you have a part of the kit which then can also carry these tracking devices, that will obviously be an advantage. And Impulse in itself holds a lot of opportunity to develop products within a lot of other sports, obviously. It could be an insert for a helmet, it could be a better boxing helmet, it could be for rugby, for instance, and you can imagine many other sports. Our product is patented. I'll be happy to tell you more about that. We have unfortunately been a little bit delayed by this virus. We were actually supposed to, when we were invited here, we thought we would also have been launched in Scandinavia. Unfortunately, we were a little bit delayed. Our factory is back on track. So we are launching now on the 1st of May. We're ready to do that. The reason why we are here is because we aim to launch in the US as soon as possible, at the latest by 1st January 2021. We have engaged a very knowledgeable person here that is paving the way, Chris. And we are essentially seeking American partners that will help us with this huge Viking invasion of the US market. You may be aware that the first European to land in America was actually Erik den Røde, Danish Viking. He left again. We are not going to leave. So we hope that there might be some among you that will meet us also at the booth and talk more. Thank you.
Could you tell us a little more about the product? I've seen other more helmet, more coverage type head products. How is this different, and what was the intention of only wrapping the head versus going over the entire head?
I think that I explained with the 3 keys, I think that we know that to have this be preventive use, to have this be part of the kit, we need to realize that there are some barriers. One of them being vanity, essentially, tradition, especially in Europe, maybe. So we have tried to find the very best compromise between real protection, protecting the right areas, the most exposed areas, and at the same time, as I say, leave room for football hair, because it is obviously a balance. You could protect more, and we can obviously also see ourselves developing products that offers more protection, and even also products that offer less protection and, counters the vanity issue even less. So that's the reason why the design is as it is.
And then you had mentioned aligning in the U.S. market. Have you engaged in any discussions either with the MLS or the USL programs at all?
No, I mean, as I mentioned, we have engaged with Chris Holmesy, who's here. He's out of Nike and other sports ventures, and he is very analytical, very engaged, and has already done a lot to put us a little bit on the radar of quite a lot of. He's out of Portland, but right now we are also engaging very much with the people at Virginia Tech, the people at University of Wisconsin, to understand all of these things. We need more product, to be honest, in order for us to go out and have them tested and have them. But I do believe that my sense is that we will be able to do a lot more essentially under the radar to really prepare a real larger launch, because clubs, schools, even BU here, I have some contacts there, are actually very interested to test it out. So yeah.
So can you go into a little bit more detail about your actual sort of go-to-market and then marketing strategy?
Yeah, in terms of marketing strategy, obviously there are different areas. I mean, one of them being our brand profile, which is extremely important. The other being, when I say we launch in Scandinavia, it's obviously because we have a lot of influencers, a lot of contacts, a lot of players that we know, their clubs, trainers, etc. We obviously believe that we are a novel story to a large extent, so we believe a lot in PR. We are setting up a very extensive PR strategy. And social media, I have hired a person that I believe is very good at that, 8 hours a day, social media, push. And then, of course, online advertising towards our own store and towards a Amazon brand store. So that's the essentials. We are not going to go into broad TV media. I mean, there's just not enough efficiency in that, in our opinion.
Two quick ones for you. Can you describe? You mentioned earlier companies already out there doing this. Who are you going up against? Are they the big manufacturers that also manufacture the kits, also make a headgear portion, or is it other small companies like yours? Who are you kind of going to be fighting when you come into this market?
Yeah. I think there are almost two answers to that question. One being that right now there are products out there. Some are good, some are not so good. We've tested up against them. I believe that a lot of their profile, both in the way that they have constructed their product as of yet, and also their profile, is more towards a medical after-the-fact product. If you've had a concussion, you put something on for a period of time. So I think we'll challenge them in terms of our approach to preventive use. But they are the competition, and I would say we are seeing a market which will rise rapidly, so we're not so concerned about competition. The other thing I'll say is we are on the radar of big manufacturers. We want to make sure that we can be a partner once they realize that this is such an important part of the kit that they need to get into this market. So instead of competing with us, they should partner with us. That's our aim.
Got it. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Can you, you mentioned that the design was a little bit of a compromise. So can you tell us a little bit more, are you covering the areas where we see the people, the ball hitting people's head and they're getting more concussions, a little bit more about the safety of the product.
Very good point. There's been a little bit of in the beginning, when this was talked about in the beginning, maybe because of American football, there's been a lot of talk about hitting. Hitting is not the issue. It's not the main issue. 70% of injuries come from hits and falls to the side of the head, the back of the head. So this is why we are oriented against this, or towards this. We will have a kits model which has the same impulse protection all the way around, because they're not hitting and they're not allowed to hit the ball, so they might as well be protected all the way around. So the compromise, you might say, is that we are focused on the areas of the head that are most exposed and that are most at risk, you might say. The temple area, side of the head, the back of the head. So, so that's the way we've approached it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Uncaged Sports. Uncaged Sports is bringing the fun of the game to practice. We are creating mobile AI products that let players compete while they learn. From Uncaged Sports, please welcome Jonathan Day.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. My name is Jonathan Day, and we are Uncaged Sports. All right, so people know that in order to get better, they have to practice. And even Vince Lombardi was probably one of the first people who said this, but everybody kind of says it now, that if you're going to practice, practice well in order to get better. And John Wooden, a player who practices well, plays well. In order to get better for your actual game, you need to practice as well as you possibly can. But if you go all the way back to Lord Kelvin, basically if you want to get better at something, you need to be able to measure it. You need to be able to say, okay, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? So everybody understands that practice is important to getting better at sports, in particular individual practices. So why are coaches still having issues getting their players to do their individual practice outside of games? There's three main reasons. One, well, the top two are that it takes away all of the reasons that most people play sports in the first place. It takes away the social bonding. It's an individual activity. You have to go out. You have to do it on your own. It also takes away the competition of the sport. It becomes boring, more monotonous, repetitive, whether it's from batting cages or going out and practicing your touch on a ball or your stick handling for hockey. It becomes a repetitive process for the player. And finally, the high cost of getting that feedback that you really need to get in order to progress. Whether it's coaches' fees, where you're paying anywhere from $50 to $200 an hour for a private coach to give you that feedback, or you're paying for your sensors that cost anywhere from $100 to $50,000, or you're paying to go use facilities that have already paid those for you. It's an expensive proposition for any player out there. So what are we going to do to try to fix this? So we're introducing Uncaged Baseball, where we're trying to gamify the experience of individual practice. We want to make it so that you can compete and have social interactions with your teammates and your friends and other athletes across the country and across the world. And we want to do it in a way that doesn't require anything other than your mobile device. Mobile devices are proliferate right now. Basically, everyone who's an athlete pretty much has one. So we don't want to make them spend any more money than they're already spending. It's powered by computer vision. There's no actual external sensor that's required for you. And the idea is that it converts every single at-bat for a baseball player into a real game at bat, whether it's in your backyard, it's hitting off of a tee, or if it's at a batting cage. It provides you that same experience as if you were in an actual game. It provides you your feedback. It gives you your pitch speed, the exit velocity, your launch angle. It gives you automated statistics tracking so you can see how you progress over time, see how one day's work compares to another day. And it gives you customizable settings. So it can work from anyone from entering in as a T-ball player all the way up to a professional player. So just to give you a couple of examples of the system at work. Here's an example of someone using it on a tee. Basically, you basically hit off a tee, put the phone up on a tripod watching you play. It gives you your exit velocity, launch angle, and your distance. Here's just two people playing in the backyard. Well, let's try that again. Nope. All right, imagine two people playing in a backyard. It'll track the ball completely, give you your velocity and every other statistic that you get from hitting off of a tee. Hopefully this one works. Yep, all right. So this is in a batting cage. Basically what you're doing is you have high-speed pitches coming in, it tracks the pitch coming in, tracks the hit going out, and converts it into what would have happened in an actual game. This is where you get into the competitive nature of it, where you can have side-by-side matches. You can say, let's play 9 innings, where basically you're the hitter the whole time. Or you can have a home run derby, or any other type of competition that you can set up. You can see it gives you pitch speed, exit velocity, and distance, projects it into a field, and then anticipates what the defense would have done in a real game. It gives you personalized stats, so it lets you track over time how you're progressing, whether you're increasing your exit velocity, improving your slugging percentage, et cetera. It keeps track of all of your tracks through all of your uses of the system. And then as I was saying, you can compete against your peers. There's different modes that you can play, number of hits for a given number of pitches. You can be as creative as you want with the system. So how are we going to make money on this? So basically, the number of players who play in youth baseball is about 7 million people in the United States. Of those, about 2.5 play pretty regularly, at least once a week. And of those, about 1.3 million are currently paying for some form of personal training. It's a pretty large market. Given the revenue model that I'm going to show you on the next slide, it comes out to about 22 million for our serviceable adjustable market, or obtainable market. So how are we going to get revenue? Number one thing is the app itself would be free to use, just like most every other app in the world right now. But it would be somewhat limited in terms of how many at-bats you can have per week or per month, and then you can have a subscription fee on top of that that lets you have unlimited use, or you can join tournaments or leagues and competitions within the system itself. We're also going to be rolling out a Coach AI capability shortly after. What it does is it tracks the pose estimation, gives you an understanding of your swing analysis, and gives you an individualized analysis of your swing and how it's progressing over time, and how you can improve your swing, whether you need to raise your hands or work on your hip motion or whatever else it may want. And then finally, there's going to be a coach's kit. Basically, any team can go out and purchase the subscription, covers their entire team. They can track how their players are doing, how their people are using their system, and provide the correct feedback to the players as well. So this is the example of the human pose estimation work where we're doing swing analysis. It gives you an individualized training. We originally had thought maybe we should map it to the 30 best swings that are ever in the history of the world. What we quickly found out is that that's not how baseball works. Everybody has their own swing and their own way of doing things. So being able to individualize it for the batter that you care about, building that model over time. And since we can predict what would have happened in a game, we can figure out which ones are more accurately going to give them improvements in actual gameplay. We also give a coach's view that will allow the coaches to see this and then give them feedback as well based on their own personal observations. And then additional roadmap, looking at additional sports. We currently have a very early version of soccer and hockey apps where basically you can work on your ball handling or your stick handling, put the camera in front of you, and you actually end up playing a video game while you're doing so. So it tracks the ball completely, and as you move your ball, the ball on the screen moves, and you can play a video game while practicing your skills, which for younger athletes is definitely a way to get them to get more touches on the ball. Quick demo. So, and we also have this up and running at the booth if anybody wants to give it a try. All right, and any questions?
Have you done anything to test kind of the accuracy that you're getting from a mobile phone camera with, you know, the actual exit velocities and angles and things like that from the baseball application?
Definitely. So we basically go out into a field and hit balls and see what the app says and see what actually happened. So we measure distances. And we measure velocities with a radar gun. For the velocities, it's within about plus or minus 1 mile per hour. For the distances, it's about plus or minus 5 feet.
Will you be selling any equipment, or is it just the program, tripods, things like that? And also, what will tech support look like?
Yeah. So our goal is we don't want you to have to buy anything else in order to get it to work. Obviously, marketing-wise, tripods would be a really good fit, so you could buy it as part of your subscription and get one sent to you. But otherwise, the idea is you don't have to go out and get anything new.
Tech support?
Oh, right.
Yep.
So the tech support, it's pretty simple to use. My son uses it. He's 12. We've had a number of other kids use it. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's not much to it from a UI point of view.
Thank you.
Is this accessible now? Like if I went, are you out there or are you still like in testing?
We're doing alpha testing right now, trying to get as many people out there using it as possible and giving us feedback on it.
Okay. I had another question. Who are your competitors in this space? Who do you identify? Because there's other companies certainly that are doing this in whether baseball, softball, or other sports, but who do you identify as your top competitors?
Yeah, so from a baseball point of view, it's mainly the sensor companies that are putting sensors on the bottom of bats and tracking the bat that way. You lose a lot of fidelity from only having a sensor rather than having video. From other sports, home court is a clear another company that does something similar.
Yeah.
All right. For basketball, so we're not trying to compete with them in basketball. We're moving to other sports.
And then final question, I know you started your presentation, baseball must be your initial sport that you're talking about. I noticed you had a softball player there. Are you going to, just from a branding standpoint, I played softball, but just from a branding standpoint, like, because it seems to be the technology is probably similar use case for baseball and softball. How is that going to be marketed to all the people that play softball?
Yeah, so my fellow teammates' daughters both play softball. They're huge softball people. It works just as well for softball. From a branding point of view, we're trying to work and figure out whether it makes sense to have two products, one that's branded to baseball, one that's branded to softball, or have one that's co-branded.
As you approach your launch into the market, what would be your strategy to enter, and then what would be your definition of a successful launch and your future goals?
Yeah, so we're located in San Diego, which is one of the three main places that baseball exists in this country. Our launch strategy is going to be partnering with the clubs in that area, getting their players out using it, trying to look at their tryout days, look at their tournament days, having setups where they can come out and try it, see how it works, and then work on that word of mouth from the coaches down and from the players' experiences. A great rollout would be like having everyone in San Diego pick it up and start using it. Trying to get as many people to use it as possible.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Pivot Analysis. Pivot Analysis, a basketball technology and data company, provides advanced analytics and statistics for customers across the globe. From Pivot, please welcome Morgan Flom.
My name is Morgan Flom. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pivot Analysis, and we are a baseline data analytics provider for the non-NBA leagues of the world. So NBA teams have a lot of resources for their data, but most other teams at every other level of play, assuming that the data is available, don't have the ability to leverage this stuff. So we're focusing on NCAA and then other international leagues where there's a core data set available, so play-by-play and box score being our primary sources. Everyone is aware of the use of analytics off that data, but they don't have either the time or money to put that to work for them. So that's where we step in, providing everyone else access to essentially this core set of lineup analytics, play-by-play tracking, and then also the NBA and WNBA will be able to access this data as well from a draft perspective. So the technology launched in July. Since then, we've been growing users month over month, collected 25,000 games, and I probably wrote this now, but over 12 million events. And this data is pretty messy at times. So in college, there's a consistent issue of scorekeepers adding subs at the end of games, or some events are mistagged or misordered. Understandable, it's a lot of human data, 700 teams, there's a lot happening. But what we can do is go in, make some of those tweaks. If a roster has a misspelled name, we can fix that, and so we're able to normalize all this data and make sure that we have one log for the team, one roster with all of the information correctly ingested. So as you might have noticed, we started in the NCAA. This represents the largest collection of teams in the world by a huge factor, and it's one spot, one data set, one way for us to reach out, onboard customers, get them access to their data, and have it be a really seamless process. We're also able to leverage these stats for other users of it, so not coaches, but journalists covering from the local newspaper to national coverage, agencies who want to find the prospects out of that, the athletes themselves, and they're all getting access to this common level of analytics from leagues that did not have it before. So this is an example of some of the visualizations that a coach would have using our stats. So able to analyze games, able to go into player combinations, really any permutation of on-court production with players on-off, situational data. And then some on the journalist side, we've had a few references in the last month focused on NCAA coverage or NBA draft purposes using our stats. Also, as I mentioned before, the NBA and WNBA want access to this rich data set, and so we're able to help them find some of these anomalies, find the players that may perform well in an on-court perspective, but the box score stats don't pop. So helping them find those diamonds or opals in the rough, and making sure that the Draymond Greens or the Fred VanVleets or some of these team impact players who don't have gaudy box score stats aren't getting missed, and so we can be able to capture some of those players. We're also able to use this data set to provide better predictive analytics, so whether it's daily fantasy or betting purposes. We're able to really go from a bottom-up perspective, capture who's on the floor, how that's affecting the outcome, and make sure that we're able to build a really strong system, league by league or conference by conference, on how these teams are performing, and eventually have that open to the general public. So maybe Howard could have some better luck next time. So on the competitor standpoint, kind of playing in a couple spaces. The basketball analytics space being our core focus right now, and then as we move forward into the online sports betting, we have two primary competitive advantages that are pretty closely tied. One of them is our ability to add new leagues. So we started with the NCAA for obvious reasons, the size and the ability to bring the data in, but scaling it into Europe, so adding the Euro League, Spanish League, German League, is a one-time fee for us, so 40 hours configuring this data set, and then after that we're able to bring all those stats in. So that gives us the ability to become a one-stop shop. So from an agency perspective, or coaches in Europe who want to scout players in other leagues or players in the States, they can now do it through one application. The data's in the same format. They don't have to worry about moving between different data providers. And we're able to really have a consistent coverage across all of these leagues. So why we think we're the right team to do this. So passionate basketball fans, data guys, analytics guys, and we've had a lot of experience building these tools. So the CTO, Justin, and I, in a previous life, worked in the intelligence community. So building data pipelines, data analysis applications, essentially doing the same things we're doing now, different data set, different customer, but the steps of cleaning up data, ensuring that it's usable and in a format that makes sense. A lot of those steps are exactly the same. And our CCO, Daniel, worked in business development across Asia and Spain, and it's given us the ability to not only support Division III team in Minnesota, but semi-pro team in Madrid, collegiate team in Manila, and really have the ability to work across these contexts in a pretty seamless manner. And finally, we're already doing it, we've already done it. So this season we've been collecting all of Division I, men's and women's, and so we've shown that we have the ability to process this data and serve it up for our users. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions.
Could we circle back to your last comment that you've already collected a sizable amount of data in the marketplace? What is the next step for Pivot to move forward now that you have the data?
So the immediate step is getting further in the NCAA. So we launched right before the season. So the timing wasn't great to have a lot of teams on board, but it was a chance for us to show that we can basically have this ability to collect all Division I, or we have a lot of Division III teams as well. So being able to get deeper penetration in the NCAA side is the obvious immediate next step for us, but then scaling horizontally across different leagues, because then we can replicate the same strategy and the coaches there have the same needs. The other consumers, media companies or NBA, is also interested in that data. So it's initially is getting deeper penetration in the NCAA from a coach's standpoint, but then being able to expand across other leagues.
Questions, just so I understand correctly, the analytics you're providing is purely based on lineup data, so like lineup combinations.
Right.
That's the
so play-by-play,
service.
we pull it down and then we add in who's on the floor at every point in time for both
Yeah.
teams. And then from a game perspective, it's useful to go through chronologically, but then the season-long data is where it gets really valuable.
Yeah.
Because then you get, obviously, all those aggregations, and you can say, okay, all possessions with a starting point guard and the backup shooting guard,
Yeah.
how do we perform, right?
So how does that source of data compare with, you went through that competitor slide rather quickly, but how does that compare to what college teams are already getting from a product like Synergy, which has like really good adoption
So
across
Synergy
college?
tends to focus in on the play types. So they get when they're in isolation, how many points per possession do they score when they guard an opponent in isolation, which pairs well with what we're doing actually, because we want to get, okay, all possessions with this guy on the floor, this woman on the floor, how does the team perform? Now we can take a data set like Synergy and say, okay, we can chunk that up into everyone that they're involved with, and now we understand at this high level, the stuff that they're not involved with, kind of can fill in the gaps, and then Synergy can say, okay, specifically, we know that they're good at guarding pick and roll, but their defensive numbers aren't good, their off-ball defense maybe is lacking, and a lot of that will show up in our data.
And then I have one other question, shifting gears. As you provide data to teams, and as you want to also get into the sports wagering market, how are you thinking about trying to sell to both markets as being providing data to betting when currently in college that's not something that's widely accepted?
Well, so our approach is from a data perspective always. So we want to just be a data services company. And I think, so for the college thing, it would be having the ability for someone to go through and generate their own bracket and play with some of that data. And then the international markets do a lot of betting on college basketball. Like a huge amount.
I'm just interested. If I'm at a school and I'm subscribed to your service, one of the things that you're going to encounter in the college market is me being comfortable with you also selling my team's data for sports wagering use. So that's why I was trying to, if you've contemplated that as you think about your sales strategy.
So the relationship of the data collection is less important, but so the teams are not uploading their data, we're collecting it and providing it back to them, right? But this is a potential factor. I think that is something that entering the betting space is not what we've done at this point. So making sure that that's obviously, we don't want to alienate our entire user base because that can be destructive, but the data is very valuable for this kind of a purpose. So that's a good warning.
What does the business model look like for your existing customers? How much of it is a subscription service? How much of it is like a one-time upfront kind of fee? Is it different if you have to, go out to some country and find a new league to start uploading? How does that all work?
So right now it's just a data subscription service. So we assume all the upfront costs of adding a league, and then teams pay per year based on how much data they want. So from like just them to them plus conference, all opponents, all NCAA. So trying to keep it pretty clean on that front so we don't have to get in. We want to be pretty low touch, so we don't want to get into one-time fees for all kinds
Got
of
it.
configurations.
So what, how real time will it be after the fact? If there are, between Division I and Division III on a Saturday in February, if there are, 700 games, how big is the staff that has to input those and clean them, and will that be ready Sunday morning for these teams?
So it's 24-hour turnaround,
Okay.
and the staff is Daniel and I the next day going through the 10 to 15% of games that had problems and fixing them. So we're able to handle the volume actually pretty well. That was part of this test run of the first season was, can we handle the 704 teams every day? And the answer was yes.
Thank you.
So you briefly showed some usage stats on one of your slides. Could you talk a little bit more about your strategy to not just grow your user base, but also grow the amount of time that they're spending with the product?
So a lot of that is, now that the seasons are getting close to the end, engaging with those coaches and making sure that if there was issues that they had or certain things that we can add in, that we were adding those back in. Because obviously when we want to, part of it is we want more usage, but if they're spending a lot of time doing something that is something we could automate, then that's maybe less usage, but something that is a lot more value for them. So the usage numbers are, I think that it's one barometer, but we really want to make sure that if they're spending 30 minutes going through like some on-off combination that we can just send them in a report, then that's something where we can maybe reduce their time, but the value add is a lot more significant. Because what we want to do is have it to be a combination of, the tool is great for asking questions, but if there's the same question they have every week, then we can answer that question without them having to go through and do some of that work. So the usage time is part of what we want to gauge, but we want to make sure that we're answering their needs specifically, as well as making sure they have the tools to ask the questions.
Okay, up next we have Artie Software. Artie Software create powerful tactical analysis and visualization solutions for coaches, analysts, and scouting departments in the sports professional market. From Artie Software, please welcome Galo Puerta.
Thank you. My name is Galo Puerta. I'm representing Artie Software. We are a company based in London, founded in 2004 by former members of the BBC. Our main line of business is broadcasting graphics, anything from overlays to the virtual reality studio for the BBC in Wimbledon last year, graphics for elections or weather or sales GP. We do also augmented reality studio for Champions League, for BT Sport in the UK, where the city comes up of the map when they are going to talk about each match. We do also custom projects. This in particular one was for a Premier League club, Southampton FC. It's a data visualization tool which is constantly ingesting Opta data, and it's for the recruitment department, so they can compare players against each other. From there, they create a monitor list, short list, and at the time of selling a player and buying another player, they can compare whether it's an interesting business or not. Another tool we do is, which is now where comes the crossing from broadcasting to the coaching and analysis market, is Telestrator, which is the ability of putting graphics on a clip, on a video. And we were actually the first company to provide one of these tools, which is this one from many years ago. You can see how in the picture and the graphics how old they look. At the time, so we were the first company to provide a Telestrator to a football club, was Arsenal in the Premier League at the time. Arsene Wenger saw this on TV and said, why I cannot have a tool like this for me? So they contacted us. We delivered it first in a big style broadcasting machine, and quickly we realized the need of having this on laptop because they could not transport it outside the training ground. Then the product evolved. The graphics became nicer, where you then could put them in the pitch in 3D. This was the interface at the time that today doesn't look that modern, but at the time was very good. That's another feature the product had is the ingest of data, Opta data in this case, so to see where the attacks come from. You can see heat maps, shot maps, passes, all this kind of data visualized. That product was good, but you needed broadcast level, engineer level knowledge to be able to operate it. So that's why I'm here, why we are here today. This is our new venture, which is called the Tactic family of telestration products, which we completely redesigned from scratch a couple of years ago, with the purpose of that sport coaches and analysts could have a cost-effective alternative, easy to learn and easy to use alternative, and that can run in any hardware. They run in anything from a MacBook Air onwards. The learning is done by online tutorials that before was necessary to go on 2-3 day learning courses, and that's the kind of animations you do with the product. It comes in 3 levels. Tactic Lite, which is ideal for high school, college, academies, which gives animations on freeze frames. Then it's an intermediate level called Tactic Advanced, which is already going from academy to the professional level, where in addition to Lite, now you can also do animations on moving pictures, tracking of players, for example, either manually, or if you have the tracking data that you can ingest, then you can also automate the graphic. And the top version of the product is Tactic Pro, which in addition to all what is in Lite and in Advanced, also give metrics, run distance, speeds, distances in between players, etc. It all comes so in a much simpler interface now, much easy to learn. It's very quick to create an animation in few seconds, and that's so we designed it with having in consideration, so with all our experience in the broadcast industry and also in the coaching and the sports world, to design a tool that was easy to use, cost effective, and quickly to learn. Our route to the market, in addition to the normal contacting clients and your friends and your all business partner, we decided that social media was the most interested way for us. It was in particular, or it is in particular, Twitter. It has been an incredible tool, really at zero cost, I would say. What we did is we located coaches and analysts in different parts of the world. We gave them the software. They learned how to use it, and then they, in their own accounts, they could post examples of what the software did, and these examples reach the right audience directly in their own language. So from that, it generated an incredible feedback, and we have now over, I would say, 100 tier 1 clients all over the world. We are now in more than 30 countries. We have clubs like FC Dallas in MLS, Gremio Porto Alegre, the winner of the Libertadores Cup, Mexican Federation, we just won the Gold Cup last year. And in the particular case of Football Federation, Australian Football Association of Wales, before they only had the possibility of providing telestration to the senior men's A team, and now with our tool, they are in a position to provide telestration to both senior men's team, women's team, and from the senior level all down to under 15, which is the first category. It is so also the younger players demand this kind of tools or learning through with graphic examples more. So it's a market that is really growing and is a product that is well accepted. Outside football, we also already have top teams like the 3 times world champion in rugby, the All Blacks. We work with AFL clubs, field hockey. We will be working, or we are working with the Japanese Basketball Association for the Olympic Games, hopefully, and for both the men's and women's team. And we are now bringing into the product machine learning and computer vision to some of the processes that are at the moment manual or semi-automated. We can also speed them up for further. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Can you talk a little bit more about the Light product? It seems like you guys have a lot of top tier clients here, but I'm just curious about some of the use cases for high school, youth sports, college that you mentioned.
Yeah, so Tactic Light, which is the product ideal for that market, because, for example, in basketball that they play very often, or where they don't have the same staff as in a top professional club, we launched a Tactic Light, which has a workflow that is very ideal for that market. That product was just launched on beginning of January this year, and that's where we are starting now. We are already, several people are testing it, and we hope it's going to be successful as the other two. We started the launching of the product in a bit of a strange way. The first one we launched was Advanced, the intermediate version. Then we did Pro, and then we did Light. So hopefully this is so NCAA, college, high school is clients that will be coming this year.
You mentioned that you kind of started in broadcast media and then went to teams. In your mind, at full maturity, are you still selling to both, and which is sort of your primary focus?
Yeah, it's to do graphics of this level. Anybody can do 2D graphics at the moment, even with a phone. It's possible to do 3D graphics, broadcast quality graphic on the pitch. That's a complicated business. That's why there are only 4 companies in the world doing that. We assume, we expect that we are going to have, or we have already, tactic broadcast and tactic for coaches, so what we call a sports professional market, and we expect that both will go on each for each market. The broadcast business is a bit different because it's more live oriented for replays and this kind of thing, and the coaching market is more for pre-game preparation, post-match analysis.
You talked a little bit about your initial social media strategy that seemed to have been fairly effective. What's the next level strategy? Because as you want to get, particularly following up on the earlier question around high school and college market here in the U.S., what's the strategy to really dig into both of those markets?
To go into this market here, we are going to do something similar, which is in every sport, join, let's say, with coaches which serve as ambassadors of the product. They show the examples of what the product does. And in this market in particular, so the word of mouth is very important as well. So that will be the way going forward.
The start in the broadcast market appeared to be more real-time analytics of the game movement. Is the telestration model all AI, or is it true video with the product overlaid, so it's still a real game and a real analytic of a live match?
It could be done, so it has the possibility to be done fully manual. So you get the video without any data, any tracking data, and you literally keyframe and put the circles and put the arrows. If you don't have the tracking data, if you have the tracking data, it can be ingested, similar to the Optadata example. And what that will give you is automated graphics. No? So you click the graphics and the follow will be automatic. That is now with computer vision and machine learning becoming sort of irrelevant unless you need 100% precise data. But also machine learning is not 100% effective, so it's like 80% of the cases. So you have all the options from completely manual to fully automated.
In the automated, is there a turnaround time or a learning time for the coaches or the team to have the analytical output?
No, it's once the ingest of the data is done, depend on the data provider, because normally what you tend to find, especially in optical tracking, is that the live data has a lot of noise, and then they release something a few hours later, and then they release something 24 hours later that is without noise. So if you do it live, it's going to be noisy. Could be used, but is used by many clubs, but you get sometimes some strange players running at 60 miles an hour.
How many of your current clubs, you said you had roughly over 100 top clubs using it across the world. How long have they been using it? How many seasons?
So Tactic for 2 seasons, which is now becoming to the 3rd season. Some of them were clients of the previous product, but in Tactic, yeah, from the beginning to around 2 years.
All right, thank you. Okay, we have one more presentation. Reminder before we do this final one, this is the performance track of the startup competition. There was also the fan engagement track this morning. The awards for this will be in the Alpha Awards room at 5:30. And also there is the trade show hall that all of these startups have a booth that is outside of the 210 room if you want to go visit them. So with that, the final presentation today is MX3. MX3 revolutionizes health and fitness diagnostics with a system that tests and tracks personalized hydration and electrolyte loss. From MX3, please welcome Dr. Gersh Chana.
Does that advance the slides?
That goes forward, that's backward.
Generate some fresh saliva, place some on the tip of your tongue, and I'll tap this sensor a few times to to show you your hydration status. That's a simple device that we've developed. MX3 is, my name's Gershwin Chana, and I'm lead scientist at MX3 Diagnostics. MX3 is transforming what's possible for personalized health and fitness. The device I just showed you is our new MX3 hydration testing system, a simple, convenient, and reliable way to sample salivary osmolarity. Salivary osmolarity just looks at the ratio of electrolytes to water in your saliva, and that determines your overall body hydration status. Now, MX3 brings together a team which has experience and expertise which spans biomedical engineering and biomedical science. This includes microelectronics, microfluidics, machine learning, signal processing, really to build these platforms for point-of-care diagnostics to measure molecules associated with health and performance, as well as general health and well-being. Now, we all know that dehydration is a problem, but as little as 1 to 2% body mass loss can actually lead to significant cognitive and muscular performance impairments. And this can impact on a number of different communities. This include workers who are exposed to heat, as well as athletes who are looking to be in their optimal hydration state for performing, and soldiers and military personnel as well. These effects can actually increase 4 times the likelihood of developing heat-related issues. And that can lead to a 30% loss in productivity, as well as a 50% increase in diseases associated with dehydration, such as kidney disease. Now, when we first started off developing the MX3 hydration testing system, we had a vision in mind to make something which was non-invasive, rapid, accurate, and convenient for our customers to use. So one of the main challenges we had, if you wanted to do a salivary osmolarity in the past, you would have to send your saliva sample to the lab. They would run it in a $10,000 piece of equipment called an osmometer, and they would give you a result. So that's not convenient in terms of teams and players and athletes being able to use that on a daily basis. So what we did was we benchmarked our device against the lab-grade osmometer. And we achieved a very good correlation between our device and this lab-grade osmometer of the order of 0.95. This has been independently replicated by an external laboratory, and more recently by the US Air Force, who have also conducted this external validation as well. The way our system works in terms of physiological validation is we actually relate our shift in salivary osmolarity to nude body mass loss. And we know that we have a significant correlation between our shift in salivary osmolarity and nude body mass loss, and that enables us to actually track fluid loss according to your salivary osmolarity. We're targeting 3 main key customer groups. That includes sports and fitness, it includes military and emergency services, as well as industrial worker safety as well. And really, this is the first viable saliva-based solution for salivary osmolarity. Really the world's first electrochemically based platform for actually analyzing salivary osmolarity. So we're building this platform. The device can be used in a standalone fashion. You can actually get a hydration status reading from the device itself. But you can use it, it's best to be used in conjunction with our app so that you can actually track the data over periods of weeks and months. This actually gives coaches and athletes a way to actually track their hydration, make sure they assess and prepare themselves and they're optimally hydrated before each training session, before each game. It gives the coach the ability to actually highlight players who might be more susceptible to chronic dehydration and actually do some kind of nutritional intervention with them to make sure that they're getting enough fluid replacement and making sure that they're in an optimally hydrated state before they take the field. We also understand that everyone's saliva is different and there's variabilities in people's salivary osmolarity. So we actually have a way that you can personalize the system by actually baselining the player or baselining the individual and looking at their salivary osmolarity range when they're fully hydrated. That range can then be used for the athlete to actually track when they're in and out of their optimal hydration zone to be able to understand whether or not they're optimally hydrated or not. Our 3 customer bases make up about $750 million. There's obviously additional customer bases in addition to these 3, which is military, sports and fitness, and worker safety. There's the whole medical market. We haven't begun to foray into that, but we will in the future, and we'll be going down the path of potentially seeking FDA approval. But for the time being, these are the 3 main markets that we are actually currently selling product into: military, sports and fitness, and healthcare. And these are the 3 key markets that really feel the acute pain of dehydration, and for them, being able to continuously monitor hydration status is very important. Now, our business model is one where we are selling devices to customers. It's a recurring business model so that The sensors will need to be purchased after the device itself, the MX3 lab, has been purchased. And then in order to actually continuing monitoring your hydration status, you need to then buy these sensor strips. At the moment, we're not monetizing any of the data access in terms of the app and the portal, because we have a solid platform for this, but we're still undergoing development, we're still undergoing database integration, pulling APIs and data from other fitness tracking services such as Garmin and things like that. So once that final product is finished, then we'll be monetizing through that. But for the time being, we're not. So just in terms of customers, we've actually have over 3,000 active users. We've been selling devices into the US Air Force, into the Army, other military, and also LA Fire Department as well. In terms of sports and fitness, we've sold devices to Major League Baseball, teams in Australia involved in the rugby league, international rugby union teams. We have a partnership with Ironman Oceania, and we attend their events, and obviously for the endurance community, tracking hydration is a very big and important thing for them in order to do as well. And then finally, we've had a lot of success in the mining and construction sites, and this is largely based in Australia, where there's obviously an imperative need for workers to monitor their hydration status to ensure that when they're doing these work under these very hot, humid conditions, that they're actually maintaining their safety and they're being optimally hydrated. Our future roadmap, this is really our first sensor that we've developed. We also now have a sweat sodium sensor. So this sensor will tell you how much fluid you're losing according to tracking your fluid loss. Our sweat sodium concentration, sweat sodium sensor, which is benchmarked against an electrolyte analyzer and has a very tight correlation, will tell you what you need to be replacing. So it's really the what and the how much that we're telling you with our system. And we find that information would be very valuable to our customers. Moving on down the line, we will have sensors for electrolytes that are already being prototyped, as well as sensors for key things like lactate, CRP, cortisol. These are all important markers for performance, but also beyond performance, general health and well-being that we feel are going to be targeting our key customer bases, but also general consumer bases as well. Okay, thanks for the time.
Hi.
Hi.
Could you talk a little bit more about the hardware functionality? I saw that there was the hardware and then the strips.
Yep.
Maybe if you could talk a little bit about what would be a reasonable ratio for hardware units to people, and also maybe touch a little bit on the presence of a lot of Purell in the area and the cleanliness and the disposable nature of the strips and how all that ties together.
Absolutely. So in terms of actual number of devices per players, or if you're in a team, we recommend about one for every, say, 12 players in terms of measurement. That just makes the whole process very efficient. So in one of our first partners was the Swedish World Cup soccer team. We were able to test their 25 players in under 10 minutes, basically, and give hydration status advice to them as well. And sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Just the sanitation and the concept of disposable.
Yes, so basically we have an eject button here. So if I eject that will actually eject the sensor strip. So that enables a very quick way. It's a one-time use sensor, so it's disposable, and you throw it away after you've done the testing. We've actually made the sensor strip relatively large on purpose, so it provides a sort of like distance between the actual entrance point here to the actual tip of the sensor. The sensor uses a very small amount of saliva, less than a microliter, so it's very quick, very rapid, and we haven't had any issues in terms of contamination of the unit or anything like that with our customers.
Great. And just one follow-up question. Yep. On the future prototypes, will those be launched by a new hardware unit or by a different sensor strip type?
So we're hoping to, as many of those as possible, to use this current lab. Some of those, the technologies will vary a little bit. So for some of our markers that I touched on, like cortisol, we'll be using more of an immunological approach. So we're putting an antibody down on there. We'll still be using the platform and doing it electrochemically, the analysis. So the answer is we hope to do as many as possible with this, and then obviously the sensor strips will be purchased separately if you wanted to do those different assays. Yeah.
I'll stick on the hardware question for a minute.
Sure.
Like, from a supply chain perspective, like how is that set up to, as your sales increase, what's just the model to get more of the actual kits out to market, and how quickly do I have to wait if I'm running a team before I get 5 of the units to deploy on my campus?
It's a great question. So we do have a supply chain set up. The devices are produced at the moment in the US. So we're able to produce a decent amount of devices, say a few hundred devices, sort of like in a very short period of time. At the moment, our marketing hasn't been very aggressive, so we haven't gone out there to try and really sell lots and lots of units. We've done probably about just over $250,000 worth of sales. We launched in Q3 of 2019. In terms of scaling up, we have things in place to be able to do that, and obviously as we actually scale up in terms of larger numbers of product, then our price point will come down as well.
Can you, in as much detail as you can and make sense, go through the market sizing specifically for that bar that was sports and fitness? And how much of that is organized team sport athletes like college and pro, and how much, if any, is the person who likes to go run 3 or 4 miles after work and make sure they're properly hydrated?
I think that's a great question, and we know that everyone may not have as much need for tracking their hydration as much as, say, let's say the sports teams. Now, when you're talking about that particular sector, obviously professional sports teams, NCAA teams that we're selling our device into already, they care about being able to track and monitor hydration. There's a big push now in sports teams to be not only about the hydration tracking, but what should you be replacing as well. So more about precision hydration. So in terms of the general consumer market, we've got people like the Ironman, so triathletes who are very interested on an individual basis because they care about these things. They lose obviously 6-7% of body mass loss as they're going through a full triathlon. So they care about these things. So we're not going to we're selling to, we know it's going to be a percentage of the general consumer market that we'll be able to sell to for the hydration testing. But we feel that once we add the other markers, and we're really offering a device where you can actually do the testing at home for things like cortisol, there's a large consumer base who would be very interested in actually monitoring their cortisol at home.
Thank you. And will there be anything smaller, like and I guess I asked this as a runner, to carry with me, because that looks bulky, unless there's something I'm not thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, we do have plans to have something which is a lot more sort of like, smaller and sort of like maybe able to put on your arm or something like that, and with the strips actually integrated in there so you could actually just be testing yourself. The whole idea behind the system is, though, and I didn't really touch on this, I said assess and prepare, is really to look at that optimal hydration zone where you've established your baseline and prepare yourself before you go do your training session. So don't test yourself right before and say you're dehydrated, because you can't do too much about that. You're going to go for your run straight away. But if you test yourself 3 or 4 hours before and you're out of your zone, you can actually do something about it, retest yourself, and then you're good to go.
How much does this system cost, and who are your main competitors in the area?
Yeah, so the system costs $799 at the moment. So this is our sort of like pro version of the device that we are selling to teams. Sensor strips are $0.5 each for the sensor strips. The main competitors, there's no one else who's doing salivary point-of-care devices, the first real one which is in the market. So direct competitor, not really. In terms of hydration status, there are competitors out there who are doing sweat patches. Now, the main difference between the competitors who are looking at sweat and looking at sweat for hydration status and us is that we can actually tell your hydration status at rest and also while you're exercising. So we can actually do both. With them, obviously, you need to be sweating to be able to tell your hydration status. So that's our main key differentiator in the market between us and our competitors.
And you said that the analytics platform is not monetized at the moment, correct?
Yeah, so we have an app that runs through a portal as well. The portal obviously allows for doing a little bit more advanced analytics, but we actually show a lot of that on the app itself. So we're just as we continue to integrate the database and the app continues to be evolving. As I said, we only launched in Q3 of 2019. So we really want to give the customers, the best possible use of our product. They're paying for the product. So we're giving these upgrades for these app and for the portal sort of like free of charge at the moment. There'll be a point where we've integrated enough databases and the app is a little bit more complete that we can then start monetizing through that. And that could be something like, if you're an individual user and you buy the system, well, you'll only be allowed to set up 2 profiles for actually tracking hydration. Whereas if you're a team and you buy the professional version, it'll be more users' capability.
And what you mentioned the other databases you might integrate. Is that just additional markers from new systems or, other kind of performance tracking data that could be, really useful, especially at a team level?
Absolutely. So, things like Catapult system, activity trackers like Garmin, those are very interesting things for us to integrate with because obviously activity is related to dehydration. There's a scenario where we could do some sort of predictive modeling with the team that we have assembled to actually be able to tell you when you should be actually taking a hydration assessment. We think based on your activity that you could need to track your hydration now. So you could then do a test and just figure out where you're at. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so just some thank yous, especially to our judges. That was a 2-hour block nonstop, so we really appreciate the time. All the startups, they were selected from the dozens that apply in the fall. These are our handful of favorites that come here to the show and present, so I appreciate all of them making the trip and the very good presentations. And again, the award ceremony is at the Alpha Awards in the Bill James Room at 5:30 tonight. So thank you, everyone.